Great Guy, starring James Cagney. Three other especially memorable characters would be Aloysius, played by James Burke. I love seeing him in this. It's one of my favorite performances of his. Pete Riley by Edward Brophy. Always fun to see him in stuff. And then Captain Hanlon, played by Edward McNamara. Really great role in this. I also love seeing him in Arsenic Road Lace. I'm not going to list everybody, but some other great performances would be by Mae Clark, Robert Gleckler, and Joe Sawyer. And while we're still talking about the cast, I also wanted to note a small uncredited role by Robert Lowery. Robert Lowery was later known for his roles in action films and probably most remembered as playing Batman in the 1949 serial. But it was cool to see him in this, in one of his very early roles. It was actually the second movie that he was ever in. In this film, James Cagney plays Johnny Cave, the new chief deputy of the Department of Weights and Measures, and who fights against racketeers that cheat and shortchange the customers. It's interesting to see just for that aspect alone. It was a big racket at the time, and Johnny explains perfectly in an early scene the importance of his job to his team members. He also demonstrates several clever gadgets the racketeers used, including lead weights in the chicken. James Cagney was known for playing tough guy roles, but Johnny Cave is one of his toughest, I think, because he's standing up for what's right, and with all the odds stacked against him. Johnny gets bribed, threatened, mugged, and then threatened again. But he fights back stubbornly and refuses to let the racketeers have their way. Plus this, his relationship with his fiancée is put on the line when he prepares a case against her boss, and whom he plans to expose for swindling the local orphanage. He has to choose between her and his fight against crime and corruption, and, well, that's pretty tough, and he chooses the latter. But the crooks hire a thug to attack him and steal his evidence, and however, this turns out to be pretty bad, because then the thug decides to go into blackmail. And the climax comes to a rise at a big cocktail party hosted by one of Johnny's old pals, Pete Riley. At the party, Johnny spots one of the villains and follows him to the thug's apartment where they have the final showdown. I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers here, but I do have to point out one of my favorite scenes, phenomenal scene. It really, really makes the movie, and that would be whenever the main antagonist, Marty Kavanagh, comes to see Johnny and offers him a nice slice of cake. But Johnny doesn't want some. He tries to demonstrate that a few pennies means nothing, and he tosses them out the window. But right afterwards, Johnny Cave tosses the guy's hat out the window. This film was the first of two films Cagney made for the independent film company Grand National Pictures. And at this time, he had just successfully broken his contract with Warner Brothers. Cagney was a huge name for the company, and they invested a lot more money than usual in their two films featuring him. For his second movie, he was offered a gangster role in Angels with Dirty Faces, but he turned it down because he was worried of being typecast as a gangster like he had been at Warner Brothers. So he opted instead for a musical satire on Hollywood titled Something to Sing About, which is another of my favorites. Unfortunately, neither A Great Guy or Something to Sing About were a financial success because they had gone so far over budget and were unable to recoup from their investment. So rather than saving the company, these two films actually became a key factor in its collapse a few years later. Grand National released a total of 100 films in its 3-year run. Cagney's walkout on the Warner Brothers was a really big deal because at the time it was unthinkable to take the studios on and win. When James Cagney came back to Warner Brothers, he came back to a better contract, a 5-year, $150,000 a film deal with no more than 2 pictures a year. Cagney had full say Cagney also had full say in over the films he did or did not make. And in addition to this, his brother William Cagney was also guaranteed a position as assistant producer in all of the films that he starred. I always loved Great Guy because I feel that this film, and also Something to Sing About for that matter, reflected a bit of the character of the actual actor himself. In addition to his career in movies his role in politics, Cagney was also a painter and a farmer. He bought a 120-acre farm where he raised horses and cattle. And he also enjoyed sailing and owned boats harbored on both coasts of the U.S. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear what you think about it. Also, I recommend seeing A Great Guy if you haven't. It's a great movie.